Hard.
Enro, how is the valley immersion? Shireen? Cheaper?
Senyum je lah. Okey. Si mana dapat memanja. Apa pun dia.
Hi everyone. Just to do a little bit of a recap of what we did this morning before I jump into what we actually did in Sook. The purpose of why we did this valley immersion was because Colin and Eric have been analyzing climate data on the global scale. And what they did with that was they zoomed into Sabah to see and model the projections of what it will look like for us in the future. Now, there's a lot of information that we can get from this data, but what was missing from this data was the stories from the ground, so the bottom-up part of climate change. So what we were trying to achieve with going into Sook, going into Wangkot, going into Pitas Laut was to see where they meet in the middle, where they might be in harmony or not be in harmony. It's just an introduction. What we did, we were the only group that had the opportunity to interface not only with the community but also with industry. So we stayed on the first day with Bornean Timber. We visited their operations, presented our predictions, what we thought the climate in Sabah could look like mid and end century. And we interviewed 3 of their key managers, had informal discussions and also received some of the data that they were collecting over the years in their area. On the second day, we visited 2 dusun kampungs, which is Kampung Pulutan and Kampung Dumbun. In Kampung Pulutan, we interviewed 5 members of the community, and in Kampung Dumbun, we interviewed 3 members. So they were of different ages, background, and gender. To preface our trip there, we were received in trust because we had already have past relationships both with Bornean Timber and with Pakos Trust. In terms of the sharing, what we found was that the interviewees, they were very articulate about the climate impacts. And so we really felt what they were telling us. So that's kind of similar to what Nat shared this morning about feeling the data. They also described the changes very precisely, and they talked about struggling and coping. But one of the interesting things that we found was they were always talking about adapting and tweaking, but it was not so much about transforming. And even in moving forward, they don't always see eye to eye ways to move forward. So then we realized that the people were already discussing all these issues at the local level. They were already responding to climate in ways that we think the top-down doesn't really realize. And because we were the group that had the opportunity to interface both with industry and community, we saw the difference in the way they were responding. So company, Bornean Timber, they really well articulate what was going on, but they did it in very management level style, so using very scientific terminology. But in what they were telling us, we found that perhaps they were of limited capacity to deal with climate change because management deals with day-to-day operations. So the way they spoke about it was weather for operations rather than climate change as a whole. In terms of the community, they were very descriptive about what they were telling us, what they were experiencing, but they were not aware of what might be causing it at a global level. They also understand how deforestation is impacting their local climate and water sources. So all in it together, how these how industry and communities interact is that, one, they all occupy the same landscape, so they are intimately connected on multiple levels. And we found that they're also actually already collaborating effectively on issues like fire risk. So there is an understanding between them how to manage that. We also went through their history. So Bornean Timber's history begins in 1997 when they arrived in the area. That was when they won the 100-year concession for FMU 11. And then a year later, they had a major fire which burned down 13,500 hectares of cleared earlier logged lowlands. And then in 2016, they had another fire, which was major, and that fire burned down 3,800 hectares of plantation. So how Bornean uses the land is 54% ITP, which is industrial tree planting, 30% new forest management, 14% high conservation value areas, and then 2% of the land they granted to the local communities. In 2018, they started looking at planting 40 hectares of durian, and they're also trying to diversify their income by looking at carbon offsets. So Bornean Timber, when they arrived, they built a road in Sook, and that provided access to, well, not only for their operations, but also for the local communities around them. And in current time, they also provide employment to the locals in the area. So they hire rubber tappers, and they have ongoing engagements and relationships with 29 neighboring communities. Now, the history of the community in that area is that most of them are not actually from there. So they were the Dusuns that migrated in the mid-1970s to that area in search of new livelihoods. So when Bornean Timber arrived and then they built the road, that expanded the economies of the communities in that area as well. So they were able to go out, find new means of living and earning income. They are already aware of how the changes in the climate and the environment affects their livelihoods and things like water sources, but they are also aware of how the entry of Bornean Timber and the building of the roads help them become more resilient to crises like drought, because they can now have access to different ways of earning income. So what we saw in the landscape was 50 years of dramatic change. What was once primary forest back then has changed into agricultural plantation. So according to the locals, deforestation has raised temperature, changed their rainfall patterns, and they have increased vulnerability to drought and wind. Open landscapes also increase their fire risk, and they're seeing impacts on wildlife and fisheries as well. Not only that, but the hydrology has also transformed, because the communities do plant oil palm, and this oil palm is it lacks water. So it uses up a lot of water, and then that dries the rivers and streams around them. And when the rivers are dry, grass will start to grow, and then you have debris and log where the river once was. So once there's heavy rain, heavy downpour, they experience short and heavy flooding events. But one important thing to keep in mind when we move forward with this is that Borneo has always been shaped by major weather events. So we've always had major rainfall, major drought, these kind of things happening. It's not exactly constant. But the way that climate change might change that is that we will experience these major weather events with more intensity, and they will tend to come more frequently.
This is one of our main topics, is the increasing weather unpredictability. And from the Bornean side, when we did the interview, it was a lot of the work planning is disrupted. It's difficult to plan and achieve ordered work plans due to seasonal unpredictability. So sometimes if it rains, you can't go and tap rubber, or the roads are flooded, and just causes a lot of chaos. And then the next is extreme events. High winds have damaged buildings and blown trees. So like in one of the places we were, they were explaining that now all the roofs that they have to make it stronger and more resilient to winds, and yeah. But it's unclear if the winds worsen or buildings and trees older and more vulnerable. Heavy rain associated with landslides, floods, and damaged infrastructure. From the community side, loss of regular seasonality. So ordered cycles of musim or seasons is a thing of the past. Now 4 seasons can come and go at any time. So there's like cold, dry and hot, wet, and then there's wet and hot. Another term was like nasib sendiri or tanaman saja. Since it's impossible now to predict weather patterns and seasons, they just kind of have to go and just plant and hope for the best and just crop. Extreme weather events, so there's been an increase in floods, droughts, wind can come at any time, damage infrastructure and lives, new methods to hold down roofing. So they've been like testing and doing some weird stuff, making it stronger. Also health compromise, immunity in hot, wet seasons and changes in seasons. So I think similar to like Wongkot. Next topic is weather and work. From the Bornean side, increase in temperatures have impacted working hours. So workers are requesting to change the hours in hot periods because it's so hot. Need to constantly shift workers to do different tasks with unpredictable weather. So like example, cannot tap rubber in the rain. So they kind of have to figure out what to do with the workers and, kind of move here and there. And then from the community side, increase in temperature impacting working hours. So same shifting in working hours due to unbearable heat, increased drinking water is required when working. Also, safety concerns in extreme rain events, for example, like palm oil, poor visibility, and its wet and slippery conditions.
I will talk about agriculture and yield for the Bornean timber. For information, they have a plan to 20,000 hectares of rubber tree and 40 hectares of durian. And one more information, what happened in Borneo timber, they have the community at the base camp not allowed to plant anything. Yeah, anything. Sayur pun tak boleh. Jadi orang perlu cari di luar. And then what happened agriculture yield in rubber? One problem, the detect problem is rubber leaf fall disease. Pokok getah ni dia ada kebiasaan di mana dalam 1 tahun dia akan ada musim luruh, musim untuk leaf fall. Dia akan berlaku dalam bulan Februari dan Mac. And then selepas itu, saat itu penoreh getah masih boleh toreh getah. Namun ketika keluar tunas baru, tidak boleh sudah sebab nilai akan turun sebanyak 60%. Dan bagaimana perubahan cuaca ini membawa kesan terhadap getah di Borneo timber, dia ganggu itu sistem. Itu musim luruh dia bukan berlaku 1 kali 1 tahun, dia berlaku berkali-kali. Dan kawasan dia sini luruh, sini tidak, sini luruh, sini tidak, dan itulah menyebabkan hasil berkurangan sebanyak 60%. Dan yang berlaku dari community pula, kesan daripada cuaca ini, perubahan cuaca ini, mereka mengubah cara untuk adaptasi, di mana mengubah masa untuk bekerja. Mereka lebih memilih bekerja di sebelah pagi dan petang, sama seperti di Kampung Wangkot. Ya, mereka menyesuaikan dirilah. Yang kedua berkenaan dengan wujudnya timbulnya ini penyakit-penyakit pada tumbuhan, dan mereka bagaimana mereka beradaptasi dengan penyakit tersebut, mereka memilih tumbuhan yang lebih tahan penyakit. Ya, kalau tanam ini 1 tahun tidak jadi, next tanam tidak jadi, cari tanaman lain. Itu yang mereka akan lakukan lah. Dan juga dia memberi kesan kepada hasil padi. Contoh yang terdekat pada tahun ini di Kampung Pulutan, mereka tanam padi bukit, cuma 1 orang sahaja yang ada hasil. Selebihnya zero. Ya, ini disebabkan oleh kemarau yang berlaku dari bulan 2 sampai bulan 5 di sana. Dan saya juga baru dapat satu informasi yang sebelum ini, setahu saya waktu proses pendembungaan, kalau hujan turun, padi akan kosong. Tetapi baru saya dapat info dari mereka, musim pendembungaan, jika berlaku kemarau, bunga itu akan layu. Jadi kosong juga. Dan itu yang berlaku di tahun inilah bagi Kampung Pulutan. And then yang terakhir, darang eksperimen lagi jenis tanaman yang baru seperti koko, dragon fruit dan sebagainya. Ada lagi saya mau tambah sini bahagian penyakit ni. Ada satu jenis penyakit untuk tumbuhan jangka masa pendek, yam, keladi. Di mana dia punya ini lawak, dia punya batang, dia punya daun lawak, tapi dia punya isi tidak ada. Ya, jadi itu salah satu juga penyakit yang mereka kesan baru muncul semenjak perubahan cuaca yang tidak menentu inilah. Ini tentang tadi kemarauan, ini tentang hujan berlebihan. Dia memberi kesan kepada Borneo Timber. Kamu nampak di sana tuh. Segala kerja-kerja, sebab yang seperti kita tahu di kawasan mereka tidak ada jalan aspal, gravel, dan bila masuk di kompartmen tanah merah. Jadi kalau hujan berlebihan, itu yang berlaku. Dia akan menyusahkan kerja-kerja dan dia juga memberi kesan kepada jalan raya, jambatan yang ada di kompartmen tersebut. Dan juga ya, kerja untuk mengambil hasil getah dan segalanya akan terjejas. Bukan sahaja bagi company itu, tapi kepada rubber taper, ya, penoreh getah yang ada di sana. Darang-darang lah tu. Ramai pula. Dan kepada community pula, banjir berlaku dan menyebabkan jalan raya juga rosak. Dan semua kerja-kerja pertanian pun terjejas apabila mendapat taburan air yang berlebihan. Dan kemudian, tapi apa yang ini, daripada perbandingan hujan dengan panas, hujan okey sikit dia bilang, ya, kepada pertanian. Tapi certain bergantung kepada jenis tanaman. Kalau getah, jarang lebih suka panas, sebab boleh potong berterusan. Kalau hujan, jarang tidak potong getah. Tapi kalau jenis tanaman jangka masa pendek, mereka lebih memilih hujan sebab tanaman jangka masa pendek memerlukan banyak air. Ya, tapi secara keseluruhan, hujan berlebihan dan kemarau ini, kalau kena sebanding 2, hujan ini lebih kurang sikit impact dah.
In terms of drought and water supplies to Bornean timbers, the increased prolonged drought season makes it more, the roads in the FMU get very dusty, and they are concerned about the health of their workers as they go there every day and inhaling dust. So while to the community, they are more concerned, like Chipper said earlier, they're more concerned about their water supplies. The streams near the village, the villages, they, in long drought, they can dry up, and they have to rely on pipes from the water department, and also digging. Even the pipe from the water department can get, the supply can get disrupted sometimes up to a few weeks, 2 weeks. The communities, they realize these risks, and they have tried to mitigate it by gazetting at the village level certain areas in the village, in forested area as water catchment to feed the gravity system. In more extreme situations, they dug multiple wells in the villages, and when the streams in the villages they completely dry up, they dig the bed so to get the water. In these instances, they have to share the water resources with other living things in the area, like wildlife or some livestock, and you can imagine the competitions there. So after some years, when they have established quite a bit in the villages, they were able to buy vehicles, and which means they can transport water from rivers farther away from the village. Managing the increasing fire threats. Tubonian timbers, they apparently have invested significantly in terms of capital and labor to prevent fires and also to put out fires in case they happen. And that include investing in technologies like drones, so erecting fire towers or conducting patrols and enhancing the communication system. They also build a prevention system like fire breaks, and sometimes they may have to do planned burnings. And they have a team of fire management in case it happens in the forest. But they also go to the communities, and because they realize the risk, communities sometimes also conduct burnings to clear their land, and they reach out to them and educate them on how to do burning in a safer way, and sometimes also help them when they have to do burning. The last major fire was in 2016, but we wouldn't know if they can cope in the future with the climate change worsening. Most of the fires happen in the industrial tree planting areas, particularly the acacia trees that they can readily burn, and the intact forests rarely burn. We also don't know if that will be the case in the future. Within the community themselves, they have certain protocols on how to prevent fire from spreading. The forested land in the area is becoming less and less, so there will be less and less threat of burning or burning in the villages. There is also incidents of fire getting worse from strong wind, and a few times maybe the fires actually started from inside the Bonian timber concession area. So, and one last thing is this: within the compartment 14 in FMU 11, there is ongoing conflict with the community in the area that Bonian timber could not plant ITP, and it remained a grassland, mainly grown. Only a certain species of pakis grow, and that one also burns very readily during drought.